My stepfather showed me his new truck, and I knew he belongs in prison. My stepfather Doug married my mom 18 months after my dad died. Hit and run on Route 49, driver never found. Dad was walking back from his night shift at the warehouse when someone struck him and kept driving. Police found him the next morning in the ditch. No witnesses, no cameras on that stretch of road, no evidence except some paint transfer they said was from a black truck. Mom was destroyed. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just sat in Dad's chair staring at nothing. Then Doug appeared. Started coming to our grief support group even though he said he'd lost his brother years ago. Always had the right things to say. Always brought Mom her favorite coffee. 6 months later, they were dating. A year later, married. I wasn't happy about it, but Mom smiled again, so I kept my mouth shut. Doug moved into our house, took over Dad's den, even started wearing Dad's watch that Mom gave him. Said it made him feel connected to the man who'd raised such a wonderful family. Everyone thought Doug was this amazing guy. He'd show up to all my college events, help my younger brother Jake with homework, cook dinner every Sunday. The neighbors loved him. Mom's friends said she was lucky to find love again. Even my aunt, who hated everyone, said Doug was a blessing after everything we'd been through. Last month, Doug said he had a surprise for the family. Let us all outside with this big grin on his face. There in our driveway was a black truck. Just bought her, he said, running his hand along the hood. Been saving up since before your mom and I even met. Had her in storage at my buddy's place upstate, but finally got the registration sorted out. Mom clapped and said it was beautiful. Jake asked if he could learn to drive in it, but I stood there staring at the right front bumper. There was a dent, not huge, but noticeable. The kind of dent you'd get from hitting something solid. And the paint around it was newer than the rest, like someone had done a rushed touch-up job. When did you buy this? I asked. Doug laughed. Oh, about 3 years ago. Got a great deal from this guy who was moving overseas. Been fixing her up little by little. 3 years ago, a year before Dad died, I felt sick but didn't say anything. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that dent, that paint job, the timeline. The next morning, while everyone was at work, I went to the garage. Doug had boxes of paperwork in there from when he moved in. I found the folder labeled truck and opened it. The original bill of sale was dated 3 years ago, just like he said. But there was another receipt behind it. Body shop work, dated 2 weeks after Dad died. Paint job and dent repair on the front right panel. My hands were shaking. I kept looking. Found his old insurance papers. He'd filed a claim for minor damage from hitting a deer the same week Dad died. Same week, same damage location, same black truck the police described. I took pictures of everything and left. Didn't know what to do. Couldn't go to the police without more proof. Couldn't tell Mom without destroying her. So I waited. The next Sunday, Doug was making his big family dinner like always. Pot roast, Dad's favorite ironically. I asked if I could borrow his truck to pick up dessert from the bakery across town. He threw me the keys without thinking. Busy playing perfect husband. I didn't go to the bakery. I drove straight to my friend Luis, who works at the collision center. Asked him to look at the front bumper, told him it was for an insurance thing. Luis got under there with his light and called me over. See this? He said, pointing at some scratches under the new paint. These are old impact marks. Something hit here hard, and whoever fixed it didn't do a proper job, just covered it up. Then he showed me something that made me stop breathing. Caught in the undercarriage, wedged deep where nobody would look, was a piece of fabric. Navy blue with reflective stripes. The same fabric from the warehouse uniform Dad wore every night. I had Luis remove it carefully and bag it. Then I drove home, bought a pie from the grocery store, and walked back in like nothing happened. Doug was telling Mom about maybe taking a family vacation, planning our whole future with his dead victim's money. I waited until the next day when Doug was at work, called the detective who'd handled Dad's case and said I had new information. Gave him everything. The receipts, the insurance claim, the fabric Luis found. The detective said it was enough to reopen the case. They arrested Doug at his office 3 days later. Mom didn't believe it at first. Said I was making things up because I couldn't accept her moving on. Then they matched the fabric DNA to Dad. He'd been driving drunk, hit Dad, and spent 2 years planning how to get close to our family to make sure we never suspected. I sit in my car outside the police station 3 days after Doug's arrest. My phone lights up again. Another voicemail from Mom. I don't listen. There are 11 now, all from the last 6 hours. The phone buzzes in my hand and I almost drop it. Detective Dylan's name on the screen. I answer and he tells me they officially charged Doug with vehicular manslaughter and evidence tampering. I need to come in tomorrow morning at 9 to give my formal statement. My hands start shaking so bad I have to put the phone on speaker and set it on the dashboard. Dylan asks if I'm okay, and I say yes, even though I'm not. He says this is the right thing, that I did the right thing. I hang up and stare at the police station doors. Once I walk in there tomorrow and make this official, there's no going back. Mom will never forgive me. Jake might hate me forever. Our family is about to be destroyed in public, and it's because I couldn't let it go. Someone pounds on my apartment door at 10 that night. I'm not expecting anyone. I look through the peephole and see Mom standing there with Jake behind her. Her eyes are red and swollen. I open the door and she pushes past me into the apartment. Jake follows, looking at the floor. Mom spins around and points her finger at my face. She demands I call the police right now and tell them I made a mistake about the evidence. I step back and she moves closer. She says Doug is being framed, that the fabric could have gotten there any number of ways, that mechanics work on trucks all the time and who knows what gets stuck in the undercarriage. I try to explain about the body shop receipts, but she cuts me off. She says I'm destroying our family over circumstantial evidence because I never accepted her moving on after Dad died. Jake stands by the door with his arms crossed, looking miserable. I pull out my phone and show Mom the photos I took of the receipts. The body shop work dated 2 weeks after Dad died. The insurance claim for hitting a deer the same week. She slaps the phone out of my hand and it hits the wall. She's yelling now, saying I planted evidence because I'm jealous and sick and I need help. I look at Jake and he won't meet my eyes. I tell Mom the DNA matched Dad's uniform. She says DNA can be planted too, that I had access to Dad's things, that I'm making this whole thing up. I ask her why Doug kept the truck if he was innocent, why he hid it at his friend's place, why he lied about when he got it fixed. She doesn't answer any of that. She just keeps saying I'm destroying an innocent man and tearing apart our family and she'll never forgive me for this. Jake finally speaks up and asks if we can just go. Mom grabs his arm and pulls him toward the door. She turns back and tells me that when Doug is cleared, I'm not welcome in her house anymore. The door slams and I'm alone with my phone on the floor, screen cracked. I meet Detective Dylan and Prosecutor Nadine Barton at the station the next morning. Nadine is maybe 40, sharp eyes, dark suit, no nonsense. She shakes my hand and leads me to a conference room. I walk them through everything. Finding the truck paperwork in Doug's garage, the body shop receipt, the insurance claim, borrowing the truck and taking it to Luis. What Luis found under the bumper, the fabric with the reflective stripes. Nadine takes notes and asks specific questions about timing, about who had access to what, about my relationship with Doug before I found the evidence. Dylan adds details about the original investigation into Dad's death, the paint transfer they found, the witness reports of a black truck, how it all matches Doug's vehicle. Nadine leans back in her chair and tells me this is going to trial. Doug's lawyer is already claiming I planted the evidence. They're saying I had access to his truck, to Dad's old uniforms, to everything I needed to frame him. She warns me I'll be painted as a jealous daughter who never accepted her mother's remarriage. The defense will dig into every argument I had with Mom, every social media post where I complained about Doug, every time I was cold to him at family dinners. She asks if I'm prepared for my family to be torn apart in public. I say I don't have a choice. She nods and says that's the right answer, but it doesn't make it easier. Dylan walks me out and tells me to keep my head down, avoid talking to anyone about the case, and call him if Doug or his lawyer tries to contact me. I drive home feeling sick. Jake calls me 2 days later. I'm in class when my phone buzzes. I see his name and step out into the hallway. He's crying so hard I can barely understand him. Kids at the school are asking if his stepdad really killed his real dad. Someone showed him a news article about Doug's arrest. Mom won't talk about it. She just keeps saying Doug is innocent and the police made mistakes. But Jake remembers Dad's uniform, navy blue with reflective stripes. He saw it hanging in the garage for years before Mom finally donated Dad's work clothes. He knows what I found was real. His voice breaks and he asks if I'm sure. Really sure, because if I'm wrong, then we're destroying an innocent man and Mom will never recover. But if I'm right, then Mom married Dad's killer, and he doesn't know how to live with either truth. I tell him I'm sure. I tell him about the receipts, the timeline, the insurance fraud. He's quiet for a long time. Then he asks what he's supposed to do now. How he's supposed to go home and look at Mom knowing she's defending the man who killed Dad. I don't have an answer for that. I tell him he can stay with me if he needs to. He says Mom would never allow it. He hangs up and I stand in the hallway listening to the dial tone. Detective Dylan calls me a week after the arrest. His voice sounds different, heavier. He says they've been digging into Doug's background and found something. 2 other accidents where he left the scene. My stomach drops. One was 15 years ago in another state. A pedestrian hit on a rural road at night. Never solved. The other was 8 years ago. Doug paid off the victim privately to avoid charges. Both times he was drunk. Both times he ran. Dylan says this changes everything. It shows a pattern. This wasn't some panicked one-time mistake where Doug hit Dad and freaked out. This is a man who repeatedly drives drunk, hurts people, and manipulates his way out of consequences. He's done it before and he'll do it again. The prosecutor is adding the pattern evidence to the case. I ask if they told Mom. Dylan says they're bringing her in tomorrow. I hang up and sit on my couch staring at nothing. Doug didn't just kill Dad. He's been doing this for years. How many other people did he hurt? How many other families did he destroy? Mom finally agrees to meet with me and Detective Dylan after Prosecutor Barton threatens to subpoena her as a witness. We sit in a conference room at the police station. Mom's arms are crossed tight across her chest. She won't look at me. Dylan spreads papers across the table. Body shop receipts, insurance documents, photos of the fabric, lab reports showing Dad's DNA. He walks her through it piece by piece. The timing of the body shop work, 2 weeks after Dad died. The insurance claim filed the same week, claiming he hit a deer. The fabric matched to Dad's warehouse uniform. Mom stares at the papers. Her jaw is tight. Dylan shows her the other accidents. The pedestrian 15 years ago. The victim Doug paid off 8 years ago. Both hit and runs, both alcohol-related. He explains this wasn't an accident. This is who Doug is. A man who drives drunk and runs when he hurts someone. Mom's face starts to change. The anger cracks. I watch the denial fall away and something else takes its place. Horror. She realizes she's been sleeping next to Dad's killer for over a year. She stands up fast, knocking her chair back. She runs to the bathroom. I hear her throwing up through the door. Dylan looks at me and I look away. When Mom comes back, her face is white. She sits down and asks what happens now. Dylan says she'll need to testify. She nods once and leaves without looking at me. 2 weeks after Doug's arrest, I go to the house to pick up some of my things. Mom's car isn't there. I use my key and walk in. The house feels different now. Colder. I head upstairs and that's when I see the envelope on the kitchen counter. It's from the bank. I shouldn't open it, but I do. Second mortgage documents. Mom took out a second mortgage on the house. $50,000. I find the payment schedule. $800 a month for 15 years. I look at the date. She did this 3 days after Doug's arrest. I call her and she answers on the 4th ring. I ask her about the mortgage. She's quiet for a long time. Then she says she needed money for Doug's defense lawyer. A good lawyer costs money, and Doug deserves the best defense. I ask her how she's going to make the payments on her salary. She says once Doug is cleared, everything will go back to normal. I tell her that's not going to happen. The evidence is solid. He's going to prison. She says I've already taken her husband and now I want to take her home too. I try to explain the financial reality, but she hangs up. I stand in the kitchen looking at the mortgage papers. Mom just bet our family home on Doug's innocence. When he's convicted, we'll lose everything. Prosecutor Barton calls me in for a meeting 2 weeks later. When I arrive, there's an older woman sitting in her office. Gray hair, kind eyes, maybe 60. Barton introduces her as Lucille Wake. Lucille came forward after seeing Doug's arrest in the news. 12 years ago, she was walking her dog at night when a drunk driver in a black truck hit her, broke her hip, killed her dog. The driver never stopped. She drags herself to the side of the road and calls for help. Police find paint transfer on her clothing but never catch the driver. She kept the clothes all these years, couldn't throw them away. The lab is testing the paint now against Doug's truck. Lucille looks at me and says she's sorry about my father. She knows what it's like to be hurt by someone who just drives away like you don't matter. Her voice shakes when she talks about her dog. A little terrier named Scout. She'd had him for 8 years. Barton explains that if the paint matches, it establishes a pattern. Multiple hit and runs over more than a decade. It shows Doug is a repeat offender who's been doing this for years. I thank Lucille for coming forward. She takes my hand and squeezes it. She says she hopes this helps put him away, so he can't hurt anyone else. The story hits the local news 3 days later. I'm scrolling through my phone when I see the headline. Local man arrested for fatal hit and run, 3 years after victim's death. They use a photo of Doug from Mom's Facebook, him smiling at a family barbecue. The comment section fills up fast. Some people leave supportive messages saying they're glad justice is finally being served, but others post that I'm an attention-seeking daughter trying to frame my stepfather. That Mom was probably in on it. That we're gold diggers who wanted Doug's money. I stop reading and put my phone away. The next morning, I go to my usual coffee shop and the barista gives me this look. Pity mixed with something else. I order my coffee and sit down. 2 women at the next table are talking. One of them says gold diggers always turn on their victims eventually. The other one laughs. They're talking about my family. About me. I grab my coffee and leave. I don't go back. Over the next week, I stop going to most of my usual places. The grocery store where everyone knows Mom. The gym where Doug used to work out. Even campus feels different. People stare. Some avoid me. Others ask invasive questions. The isolation is awful. I understand now why people don't come forward with evidence. The social cost is brutal even when you're right. Jake calls me 2 days before the preliminary hearing. He's been quiet for weeks, barely answering my texts. Now he says he needs to talk. I meet him at a park near his school. He looks exhausted. He asks if I really need him to testify. I tell him what Prosecutor Barton said. They want him to talk about Doug taking over Dad's belongings. Dad's den, Dad's chair, Dad's watch. It shows how Doug calculated his way into our family, how he systematically replaced Dad in every way. Jake says he's 16 and terrified of choosing between Mom and the truth. I tell him I won't be angry if he stays out of it, that I understand this is too much to ask. He looks at me and says he's going to do it. He's going to testify. Because Dad deserves the truth even if it destroys everything else. I hug him and he's shaking. 2 days later, Jake tells Mom he's going to testify. I'm not there, but he calls me right after. His voice is hollow. Mom slapped him across the face. First time she's ever hit either of us. Then she broke down sobbing in the kitchen. Jake grabbed his stuff and left. I pick him up and we drive to Aunt Ramona's house. She opens the door and pulls Jake into a hug. She tells us we can stay as long as we need. That night, I lie awake listening to Jake cry in the next room. Our family is gone. Mom chose Doug over us, and the trial hasn't even started yet. 3 weeks after Doug's arrest, I wake up at 2 in the morning with this feeling I can't explain. Like something's pulling me downstairs. I find Mom sitting in Dad's old chair in the living room. She's holding his work jacket, The navy blue one with the reflective stripes that he wore every night to the warehouse. She's crying so hard her whole body is shaking. I stand in the doorway not knowing if I should leave or stay. She looks up and sees me. Her face is red and wet and broken. She says she knew something was wrong about Doug's story. The timing of when he bought the truck never made sense. He asked too many specific questions about Dad's accident, details about the road and the time and what Dad was wearing. He always changed the subject when anyone brought up that night. She ignored all of it because she couldn't face being alone, couldn't handle the empty house and the empty bed and the silence. So she let herself believe his lies, let herself fall in love with the man who killed her husband. She brought Dad's killer into our home, let him sleep in Dad's bed, let him wear Dad's watch, let him play father to Dad's children. Her voice breaks on every word. I sit down on the floor next to the chair. Don't know what to say because there's nothing that makes this better. She asks if I hate her. I tell her I don't. I'm angry and hurt and confused, but I don't hate her. She reaches down and touches my hair like she used to when I was little. Says she's sorry for not believing me. Sorry for choosing Doug over me and Jake. Sorry for everything. We sit there until the sun comes up, not talking. Just existing in the same space with all this pain between us. 2 days later, I get a notification that Doug's lawyer filed a motion. I open the document on my laptop and feel my stomach drop. Caleb Pope is claiming I planted the evidence. He's attached screenshots of my social media posts from 2 years ago. Posts where I said I wasn't happy about Mom's remarriage. Posts where I complained about Doug taking over Dad's space. He's painting me as a disturbed daughter who never processed her grief. Says I fixated on destroying Mom's new relationship. The hearing is set for next week. I show up at the courthouse in the clothes Aunt Ramona helped me pick out. Professional, but not too formal. The courtroom is smaller than I expected. Pope stands up and starts talking about me like I'm a criminal. He says I had motive because I resented Doug. Had opportunity because I borrowed his truck. Had access to Dad's old uniform fabric. He makes it sound so reasonable. So logical. Like of course I would frame an innocent man. I watch the judge's face trying to read his expression. Prosecutor Barton stands up for her turn. She walks through the body shop receipts. The dates prove the damage happened before I ever suspected Doug. The insurance claim was filed the same week Dad died. The timeline doesn't work for Pope's theory, but when I leave the courthouse, I feel like I'm the one on trial. Like I did something wrong by finding the truth. That night at Aunt Ramona's house, everything breaks. I'm lying in bed and suddenly I can't breathe. My chest feels tight like someone's sitting on it. My heart is racing so fast I think I'm dying. I keep thinking Doug's going to be found not guilty, that I destroyed my family for nothing, tore apart my mother and brother for no reason. The evidence will be thrown out and he'll walk free and everyone will know I was wrong. Ramona hears me gasping and runs in. She tries to calm me down, but I can't stop panicking. Can't get air into my lungs. She drives me to the emergency room. The doctor says I'm having a panic attack, gives me something to help me breathe, refers me to a therapist, writes a prescription for anxiety medication. I realize sitting in that hospital bed that I can't carry this weight by myself anymore. Can't pretend I'm strong enough to handle all of this alone. Luis calls me 3 days later. His voice sounds stressed. Doug's defense team sent him a subpoena. They're questioning whether he handled the evidence properly, suggesting he might have messed it up on purpose to help me. His boss is furious that the collision center is getting dragged into a criminal case. Luis says he might lose his job over this. I feel this crushing guilt in my chest. He only helped me because I asked him to. Now he's paying the price for my investigation. I offered to testify about how careful he was, how he documented everything. But Luis says that might make it look worse. Like we coordinated our stories. He tells me it'll be okay, but I can hear the worry in his voice. I hang up and want to scream. Everyone who helps me gets hurt. Prosecutor Barton calls the next week with news. Lucille Wake's paint transfer came back as a match to Doug's truck. The lab confirmed it. Doug didn't just kill Dad. He's been doing this for years, hurting people and running away. The case isn't about one accident anymore. It's about a pattern. Barton is adding charges for the earlier hit and run. Lucille agreed to testify even though her family is worried about her reliving the trauma. I meet Lucille for coffee to thank her. She's older than I expected. Gray hair and kind eyes. She tells me she spent 12 years wondering why someone would hit her and kill her dog and just leave her bleeding in the street. Knowing it was Doug doesn't bring her dog back, doesn't erase the pain, but it helps her understand that it wasn't random. Wasn't her fault. There was a reason, even if the reason is just that Doug is a monster who doesn't care who he hurts. She squeezes my hand across the table. Says she hopes this puts him away so he can't hurt anyone else. 4 months after Doug's arrest, the trial finally begins. I walk into the courtroom and see Mom sitting on the defense side. She looks 20 years older. Hollow eyes, thin face, like she's disappearing into herself. Jake and I sit with the prosecution. When they bring Doug in, he's wearing a suit I've never seen before. Expensive looking. His lawyer probably picked it out to make him look respectable. Mom won't look at him, just stares at her hands in her lap. The jury selection takes 2 days. I study their faces, try to guess who will believe us and who will think I'm lying. There's a woman in the front row who keeps looking at me with this expression I can't read. A man in the back who looks angry about being here. I make up stories about them in my head. Who they are, what they think. if they'll save us or destroy us. On the third day of trial, Prosecutor Barton calls me to the witness stand. My legs feel shaky walking up there. She asks me to describe how I found the evidence. I walk through every step. The dent in the bumper, the receipts in the garage, borrowing the truck, Louise finding the fabric. I try to keep my voice steady. Stick to the facts. Then Caleb Pope stands up for cross-examination. He asks about my timeline. Suggests I could have planted the fabric. Says my grief made me see connections that weren't there. He asks if I ever considered that I might be wrong. That I might be destroying an innocent man's life. My voice shakes when I answer. I tell him I considered it every single day. Thought about it constantly. But the evidence doesn't lie. The dates don't lie. The DNA doesn't lie. When I step down, my hands are trembling. Mom testifies the following week. I watch her walk to the stand looking small and broken. Barton asks her about Doug's questions regarding Dad's accident. Mom admits Doug asked detailed questions. Knew things about that night he shouldn't have known. She ignored the red flags because she was lonely. Because Doug made her feel less alone. Her voice breaks when Barton asks if she believes Doug killed her first husband. There's this long silence. The whole courtroom is holding its breath. Finally, Mom whispers yes. I see Doug's face crumple. See something break in his eyes. His lawyer jumps up objecting to the question. The judge sustains it, but the damage is done. The jury heard Mom's answer. The forensic specialist testifies next. Walks through the fabric evidence, the DNA results, the paint analysis. Everything is so technical and clinical. Like Dad was just a case number instead of a person. Then they show photos. Dad's body in the ditch. The impact injuries. The timeline of how long he suffered before he died. I can't look. Have to leave the courtroom because I'm going to be sick. Jake finds me in the bathroom afterward. We sit on the floor together. He says he wishes I never found the evidence. Says knowing is so much worse than wondering. I don't disagree. Doug takes the stand in his own defense, and I'm shocked by how human he seems. He cries talking about his drinking problem. Admits he was drunk that night. Says he hit someone but didn't know it was fatal. Claims he went to the grief group genuinely looking for forgiveness. Says he fell in love with Mom without planning to. His lawyer paints him as a broken man who made terrible mistakes. Not a calculated predator. I watch the jury's faces soften. See sympathy replace judgment. Then Barton stands up. She asks why he filed a false insurance claim. Why he kept the truck instead of destroying the evidence. Why he married into his victim's family. Doug doesn't have good answers. He stammers and contradicts himself. Every explanation just reveals more manipulation. More lies. More proof that he knew exactly what he was doing. The jury room door opens at 4:47 p.m. I've been sitting in the hallway with Jake for 6 hours, watching lawyers pace and checking my phone every 30 seconds, even though I know it won't make time move faster. The bailiff comes out first, then the judge's clerk, and everyone starts filing back into the courtroom. My legs shake walking back in. Doug sits at the defense table with his hands folded, staring at nothing. Mom is 3 rows behind him, and when I sit down on the prosecution side, I feel her eyes on the back of my head. The judge asks if the jury has reached a verdict. The foreman stands up, this older guy in a cardigan who reminded me of a substitute teacher the whole trial. He says they have. The clerk reads each charge out loud. Vehicular manslaughter, evidence tampering, insurance fraud, leaving the scene of an accident. After each one, the foreman says guilty. 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 Doug's shoulders slump forward. His lawyer puts a hand on his arm. The judge thanks the jury and sets sentencing for 3 weeks from now, but mentions the guidelines suggest 10 to 15 years. 12 years is what he'll probably get, the prosecutor told me earlier. Lucille Wake is crying 2 rows ahead of me, her daughter's arm around her shoulders. Jake grabs my hand so hard my fingers go numb. I should feel something. Relief, victory, justice. But I just feel hollow, like someone scooped out my insides and left the shell. Doug gets let out in handcuffs and he looks back at Mom. She won't look at him. Won't look at me either. People start standing up, talking in hushed voices, and I realize the courtroom is dividing into camps. Some people come over to shake my hand or touch my shoulder. Others give me looks like I'm the villain here. Jake and I walk out through the side door to avoid the crowd. Aunt Ramona's living room smells like the lavender plug-in she uses and old coffee. Mom sits in the armchair by the window. Jake and I take the couch. Nobody talks for maybe 10 minutes. The clock on the wall ticks. A car drives past outside. Ramona is in the kitchen making tea nobody asked for. Mom finally breaks the silence. She says she's sorry. Sorry for not believing me when I first showed her the evidence. Sorry for choosing Doug over her own kids. Sorry for being so desperate not to be alone that she let a monster move into our house and sleep in Dad's bed. Her voice cracks on the last part. Jake stares at his hands. I want to say it's okay, but it's not okay, and we all know it. I want to say I forgive her, but I don't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So I just sit there. Jake doesn't say anything either, but we don't leave. We stay on the couch while Mom cries and Ramona brings in tea that gets cold on the coffee table. After a while, Mom asks if we can stay here tonight instead of going back to the house. Jake nods. I nod. Ramona says of course she'll make up the guest rooms. Mom gets up to help her and I hear them talking quietly in the kitchen. Jake leans against my shoulder. He's almost as tall as me now, but in this moment he feels small again, like when he was little and scared of thunderstorms. The next 3 days blur together. I go to class but don't remember what the professors say. I sit in the library staring at the same page of my textbook for an hour. I accomplished what I set out to do. Doug is going to prison. Dad's killer will pay for what he did. But I don't feel satisfied. I feel exhausted. The grief is worse now somehow, sharper, because now I know exactly how Dad died. I know he was walking home from his shift. I know Doug hit him and kept driving. I know Dad probably lay in that ditch for hours before he died, alone in the dark. Before, it was this terrible unknown thing. Now it's a terrible known thing, and knowing doesn't make it better. My therapist squeezes me in for an emergency session on Thursday. She says what I'm feeling is normal. Justice and healing aren't the same thing. I did the right thing, but right things can still cost everything. She asks if I'm having thoughts of hurting myself. I say no, which is true. I'm just tired. So tired. She adjusts my medication and tells me to call her if things get worse. That night, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about Doug crying on the witness stand when the prosecutor asked why he married Mom. He said he fell in love with her. Maybe that was even true. Maybe he really did love her in his own twisted way. And I hate myself for feeling any sympathy for him. He killed my father. He manipulated my family. He deserves everything he's getting. But he's still a person, and watching someone's life get destroyed, even when they deserve it, leaves a stain. Mom calls 2 weeks after the verdict. She's putting the house up for sale. Can't afford the mortgage anymore because Doug's defense ate through their savings, and his income is gone now. Plus, she can't live there anymore. Can't walk through rooms where Doug pretended to be part of our family. The realtor is coming Thursday to do the listing photos. She needs help packing up Dad's things. Really packing them up this time, not just shoving them in boxes in the garage like she did when Doug moved in. Jake and I drive over Saturday morning. The for sale sign is already in the yard. Inside, the house feels different, smaller somehow, like it's already not ours anymore. We start in Dad's old den, the room Doug took over. Mom pulls out boxes from the closet. Dad's work jackets, his tools, his collection of old westerns on DVD, things Mom hid away when Doug moved in because seeing them hurt too much. At the bottom of one box, under some photo albums, Jake finds a manila envelope. Inside are letters, 3 of them. One addressed to Mom, one to me, one to Jake. Dad's handwriting on the front. Mom's hands shake when she sees them. She says Dad wrote them after his first cancer scare 5 years ago, before the treatments worked. He wanted us to have something if he died. She forgot about them. Or maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she couldn't bear to look at them. We sit on the floor and read them. Dad's letter to me talks about how proud he is of who I'm becoming, how strong I am, how he knows I'll do great things. He says if he's gone, I need to take care of Mom and Jake. Be the strong one. Keep the family together. I read it 3 times and then I can't see the words anymore because I'm crying too hard. Jake is crying. Mom is crying. We sit there in Doug's old den, in the house we're losing, reading words from the man we lost, and for the first time since the arrest, the 3 of us are crying together like we did at Dad's funeral, like we should have been doing all along instead of breaking apart. Mom and I talk that night after Jake goes to bed. Really talk, not the careful surface conversation we've been having. She admits she knew something was wrong with Doug's story about the truck. The timing bothered her. The way he asked so many detailed questions about Dad's accident, how he always changed the subject when she tried to dig deeper. But she ignored it because she was lonely and he made her feel less alone. She says she'll probably never fully forgive me for how I handled things. Going behind her back, investigating without telling her, forcing the truth out into the open where it destroyed everything. Even though she knows I was right, even though Doug deserved what he got, I tell her I'd probably do it the same way again. I couldn't let Dad's killer go free, even if it meant losing her. We're both crying, but it feels real. Not like the polite sadness we've been performing for each other. She asks if we can ever be a family again. I don't know how to answer that. We'll never be the family we were before Dad died. We'll never be the family we pretended to be when Doug was playing husband and stepfather. Maybe we can be something else, something new, something honest. I don't say that out loud because I don't know if I believe it yet. But I stay on the couch with her until midnight, and that feels like something. Jake decides he wants to study criminal justice in college. He tells me this while we're visiting Dad's grave the following weekend. He says watching the legal system work, slowly and imperfectly, but ultimately toward truth, gave him faith that justice is possible even when it's complicated. He understands now why I couldn't let it go, even though he wishes I could have. He's proud of me even though this year has been the worst of his life. We stand there looking at Dad's headstone. Someone left flowers, probably Mom. Jake says he thinks Dad would be proud too. Proud that I didn't give up. Proud that I found the truth. I want to believe that. Want to think Dad would approve of me tearing apart our family to put his killer in prison. But I'll never really know. Dad's letter said to keep the family together, and instead I broke it into pieces. Maybe that was necessary. Maybe there was no other way. Jake puts his arm around my shoulders and we stand there until the sun starts setting and the cemetery gates are about to close. 6 weeks after the verdict, I'm starting to build something that looks like a normal life. I go to my classes and actually pay attention. I meet my study group at the coffee shop and don't leave early. My panic attacks are less frequent with the therapy and medication, down from 3 or 4 a week to maybe 1 every 10 days. Mom and I talk on the phone twice a week. The conversations are still awkward and careful, like we're walking on ice that might crack, but we're trying. She's moving into a smaller apartment across town next month. Jake is helping her pack. I offered to help too, and she said maybe, which feels like progress. We'll never be the family we were before Dad died. That family is gone, buried with him in that cemetery plot. We'll never be the family we pretended to be when Doug was playing husband and stepfather. That family was a lie built on murder and manipulation. But we're slowly becoming something new. Something harder and more honest. Something that knows the worst and chooses to keep going anyway. I did the right thing turning Doug in. I know that. The evidence was there. Dad deserved justice. But it cost me almost everything. Cost me my relationship with Mom, maybe forever. Cost Jake his sense of safety. Cost us the house we grew up in. Cost us the illusion that we could ever go back to normal. But I can sleep at night now. Most nights anyway. I can close my eyes and know that Dad's killer is in prison. That the truth, however painful, is out in the open where it belongs. That living a lie, no matter how comfortable, is worse than facing the hardest truth. Some days I even believe it.